In our main topic this week here on Mastering Dungeons, we are looking at the best of. We are continuing our best of series, and we are going to talk about the adventure that came in Spelljammer Adventures in Space. That adventure is called Light of Xaryxis. Teos has the special edition copy. I have the plain old version, and we are going to talk about what's best in this adventure. This continues our series on the best of the D&D 5e hardcover adventures. So let's travel, if you will, into wild space aboard a Spelljammer. Now, Teos, we are being positive in this series.
Yeah.
We know no adventure is perfect, so we are going to focus on the high points. We are going to focus on the lessons that we might take as adventure designers or game masters, things that might bring joy to our players in these adventures.
Yep, fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. And also, there are going to be spoilers. So this this is one of these adventures that has, special haha moments, and we're gonna mess those all up if you are gonna play this. So come back a different day if you are gonna play this.
Yep. All right. So let's talk about the history of Spelljammer in general, and then this adventure specifically. This adventure was released on August 16th of 2022 in a slipcase set containing the adventure Light of Xaryxis, as well as a setting book and a monster book. Each book was 64 pages long. It also came with a DM screen and a double-sided poster map. This 5e slipcase brought back the Spelljammer setting that was originally released for second edition in 1989 using the exact same name. The 2e version was a box set, and that was followed by many releases, 2 additional box sets, many softcover source books and adventures, DM screens, paper minis, ship minis, multiple novels, and more and more and more.
And Shawn, this was a setting that when I heard about it, I was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. No way I'm running this. And my players were like, here, we bought the box set, run this for us. Shut up. And I was like, and I loved it. And so I ended up owning like all of it. Like I read all the novels. I have all the things, War Captain's Companion box set, Spelljammer box set, all of it. Hook, line, and sinker.
So this is of an era, the second edition, where it seemed like there was a new box set setting coming out weekly.
Yeah, it really did.
To the point where it became very hard to keep up, right? We had, this is where you would get Planescape. This is where you would get
Birthright.
Spelljammer. This is where you got Birthright. You got Dark Sun. You got Dragonlance. You got, one after another after another. And a very popular, popular opinion, I don't know which, was, this isn't D&D. Right.
Yeah.
Dark Sun. No, this isn't D&D because of this reason. Oh, this isn't D&D because of this reason. And yet all of it was D&D, and all of it has continued on since. This slipcase has an alt cover, which Teos showed you. And this was the first adventure / setting / monster book released in this slipcase format. Planescape would later use the same format, as did, I believe, Dragonlance and a couple other releases.
Dragonlance was weird. Dragonlance had the board game that it came with, which was sort of really bizarre. Didn't have a slipcase. But the earlier the year that this was released was that whole Monsters of the Multiverse sold initially only in a package slipcase. So that was the true first slipcase. But this is the first adventure. And then you could argue that the box that the Deck of Many Things thing came in was similar,
that's true.
But it was interesting because, like, say, Ghostfire was already doing slipcases too, so it was sort of an interesting combination. And you could argue this might overlap a little bit with what the company had been seeing Beadle and Grimm's make in certain ways of breaking books apart and stuff. So it was a smart move by D&D, sort of experiment with the price fixtures, and I think something they're still doing today of figuring out, like, what if we make the books smaller, a little bit cheaper, kind of hide the price point a bit, move it around. drive into a segment versus not. And yeah. But it's an exploration for sure. And in fact, Chris Perkins said when this came out, it's a quirky world, so why not explore this new format with a quirky setting?
Yeah. I personally like it. I personally like this 3-book setup just for use at the table. Yeah. Where if not everyone's going to buy it. So, hey, here's the player book, players. Yeah. I'm going to have the monster book here next to me, and then I'm going to have the adventure in front of me, and everybody gets to sort of use it. Anyway,
I'll just say,
have something to say there?
Just on that, like my general problem is something that Mike Shea has said many times, which is when you look at that thickness, right? A lot of the thickness is coming from the board that the end of the covers, back and front covers, and actually these pages of this adventure are thicker than usual. So
they are.
You're getting, and then the larger word count, you're actually getting a lot less. And so you can argue that something like the first Eberron book gives you more in a single book than you're getting in these 3. Like you're getting more things. So I actually like the old Dark Sun 4E model. I want a monster book, and then I want a combination, basically the setting book. Like I actually rather have 2 books than the 3. I don't think we need, as much as I love collecting DM screens, I don't think we need a DM screen for every single thing. The poster map could be inside the book. Like it feels to me like a lot of packaging, and I don't super love it, but I can see its appeal. I'm okay with it. Yeah. It's not a problem.
Yeah. Beetle and Grimm got in on the act here. They had both a silver and a platinum version of the adventure, whereas WizKids released a blind box set of minis, as well as visible sets of slightly larger ship minis and several gargantuan dragon and miniature and creature minis. So Teos is holding up an array of different Spelljammer minis, ships and monsters, and that's definitely not a mini.
Yeah, the disgusting Neolithid is almost the size of your actual intestines. If you want to, so you don't have to use your actual intestines to replicate the Neothilid. You can just use this mini. That's handy. And then the
Mastering Dungeons does not condone using your use your internal organs as miniatures.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. All right. There was also a novel later released by Random House set here. Speaking of vinyl records, which we did at the end of our last segment, Spelljams, a record produced by Chris Funk, served as a soundtrack. Yeah. I bet you have a copy of that, Teos. Tell me you don't.
Of course I do. I didn't bring it upstairs, but I do have it. Yes.
Okay.
There were like 4 versions released. I just got the one, so.
Okay.
I'm not nuts. I'm reasonable.
Yeah, right. You're a reasonable collector. The Neverwinter MMO had not 1 but 2 large releases, taking everyone into space with some amazing visuals of Spelljammer battles, monsters, planets, and more.
Yeah, and if you're at all curious to see that on my Alpha Stream channel on YouTube, I do actually have videos where I walk through like what are the major quests and try to quickly show you all the things. And it is neat always to see the D&D world reproduced visually like that, which is cool. There had been an old 2E game that I played all the time where you were in this little like space galley, you'd move around and go to different parts of space, and this is better. Even if it's imperfect by far because it's an MMO format.
Right. Spelljammer was marred, unfortunately, by what is known as the Hadozee incident, where Wizards had to apologize and put out errata for the way the new Hadozee species had some sort of undertones of offensive racial stereotypes. And after that, new sensitivity and inclusion review processes were announced on the D&D website. Errata on D&D Beyond was also found to include stealth errata, leading some fans to call for documentation of such errata, which the staff did eventually provide.
Yeah, they did things like just change the way the glide worked for the Hadozee, right? It wasn't just the part that communicated. And so then everybody was like, wait, why do we have to like figure out this delta? And that's an issue that's still true today, right? D&D sometimes on D&D Beyond's changelog will tag something, but often not in a way you can ever figure out. And trying to know how the digital version compares to your paper version is still very, very difficult.
Yep. And of course, the adventure we're going to talk about, Light of Xaryxis, was part of this package. It was made for characters of level 5 to 8, providing a short, focused experience. And we are going to definitely talk about that short, focused experience. The lead writer and lead designer on this was Chris Perkins. Writing was done by Justice Armand, Sadie Lowry, and Jeffrey Ludwig. The editors were Judy Bauer and Kim Mohan, and Dan Dillon and Chris Perkins added additional development to this product.
And probably a bunch of people who aren't credited.
Yeah, and many people, right. An introductory adventure series was put out for levels 1 to 5 called Spelljammer Academy, provided for free online and run online by Bald Bang Games. A free PDF, yes, Teos, PDF of the Spelljammer Monstrous Compendium was released, styled after the old 2E monster supplements that you had to put into a binder that you had as the pages were handed over to you. So what else came out in 2022?
It was a really busy year. Really busy.
When I read this list, I was like, wow. People said there wasn't enough content being made. Look at this.
God, look at it. Yeah, we had the Monsters of the Multiverse that we mentioned earlier in slipcase format, initially only sold in this D&D Rules expansion gift set. That came out in January. They made you wait until May to get the one new book in the bunch, which was the Monsters of the Multiverse, with its first sort of take on revising 5e monster stat blocks, very controversial. Critical Roll Call of the Netherdeep was in May. Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel was in July. Campaign Case Creatures and Terrain came out July and August. Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, the starter set, in October. And Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen in December. And if you think of this Spelljammer coming out in September, Dragonlance in December, it really was hard to say what is your main adventure of the year, right? Because everything is falling over itself, tripping on each other's releases. The marketing is so confused between, like, you've got August, you're trying to sell campaign cases. October, Stormwreck Isle, that's a new starter set that deserves a lot of focus and attention. You've got the September release of Spelljammer and the December of Dragonlance. It was all a lot, and I think I would argue too much for D&D as a brand, as a company, but it is what it is.
It is.
2022, actually, Shawn, I should say, also is a sort of peak financially for D&D. We later find, probably, if our numbers are accurate and what we see is accurate. But from a number of data points, it seems like that is really about as good as D&D 5e got, and then began, at least for the 2014 set of releases, began to sort of come down after that.
Mm-hmm. So what was Spelljammer Adventures in Space as a whole? We talked about the two other books, the player content. That was called the Astral Adventurer's Guide, 64 pages of setting that included information on travel, Spelljammer ships, new species, and new gear. However, one thing that people expected and did not get were specific ship combat rules, which had been a big part of the second edition version of Spelljammer. Nor were there rules for creating wild space solar systems, which seemed to be something that fans might have wanted to be able to create their own.
And I think back, there was even an interview with Chris Perkins not long before release, maybe in the early stages of announcement, which is usually a couple months in advance, where Chris Perkins talked about those things being in there. So I don't know if they were removed or it was things that were planned to be added but never got added. I don't know. What I do know is I did get for Extra Life a little Flapjack Flumph pin. And I did get this shirt that has Flapjack, the spelljamming navigator, but navigator, helm operator. So, it's all okay for me.
That leads us into the monster book, which was called Boo's Astral Menagerie, which had many monsters, including a surprising number of creatures from the Dark Sun setting. Which may have triggered a few people to say, "Ooh, I wonder if there's a Dark Sun spell jamming," except it's not connected to anything.
Yeah, and this reminds me, for years, there was a joke often on Twitter where people would say Spelljammer confirmed. Right. It was almost a letdown when Spelljammer was announced because people could no longer just joke about the next release being Spelljammer. And sometimes I feel like Dark Sun has become that. Like we now just say Dark Sun confirmed, as just sort of like the endless goal of you're never going to actually get Dark Sun, but it's always going to think you're getting it. Because Spelljammer vessels, we talked about this as we were reviewing other adventures. You've got them like an Undermountain and you've got, an asteroid and all these various things that are happening in various adventures. You've got a crashed nautiloid in Rime of the Frostmaiden, and Chris Perkins couldn't help but add all these Spelljammer teasers throughout. And you just felt like it's got to be coming. And when these Dark Sun monsters came out, everybody's just like, well, of course, Dark Sun has to be right around the corner.
Yep. And the last thing, as we've mentioned many times and held up many times, is the adventure. 64 pages, levels 5 to 8 adventure, which we are now going to talk about positively. All right, so the adventure, Light of Xaryxis. We'll cover the premise and the approach, as we often do with these adventures. The one of the things I noticed right away as I was reading this was it gave a larger than usual section about influences.
Yeah.
It said the following: Light of Xaryxis is inspired by science fiction pulp adventures such as Flash Gordon, John Carter of Mars, the comic Valerian et Laureline by Pierre Christian and Jean-Claude Mézeres, and the film Jupiter Ascending by the Wachowski sisters. In this adventure, brave heroes must defeat otherworldly foes to save their planet. Absurd plot twists undercut the sense of urgency, keeping the heroes on their toes as they stumble from one cliffhanger to the next. And part of me was like, absurd plot twists. Well, I guess I can't say this adventure's terrible because there are absurd plot twists.
It's
because they're telling me there are absurd plot twists.
Yeah, and I think the key to this adventure and accepting it is whether you like that. Like, if you are okay with these absurdities, and I had to wonder over and over in rereading this adventure for the show whether today's audiences get that, and probably they do. But we used to watch all kinds of shows that would be like dun 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 dun. This thing happened at the end, cliffhanger. And then next week it shows up, and next week it's like, first of all, you might not even get the right episode. But if it was the right episode, it often was the lamest, like immediately explained away, like, oh, it's actually not a problem. And you're like, oh, okay. And they just would do that kind of thing to you. And it was absurd. Or it was it would look like everybody's dead, but not actually. Nobody's dead. It was whatever, And so this adventure is full of that. Yeah.
It is. But it does have that cinematic serial TV show quality. Yeah. Even the layout of it, right? Mm-hmm. There are 4 parts. Mm-hmm. Each part has 3 chapters. So if you're great at math like I am, you know that 4 times 3 is 12. So there are 12 chapters. So there's 12 chapters and 4 parts in an adventure that goes from 5 to 8. You don't have to do a lot of thinking there to realize, okay, part 1 is level 5, part 2, 6, and so on. And each chapter is very short. This is, again, only a 64-page offering. So it means that things are very snappy. Things are moving quickly. Things aren't necessarily explained overly much. And the world building is only done to serve, for the most part, to serve the story that's moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and everything is self-contained in that way. When they visit a world, it's often, in one case, it's like the smallest world, so that there's just nothing to explain. But that is not a terrible technique, when you want to keep things sort of brief like that, right? You're just trying to give a glimpse. I like in general that premise and approach-wise, this adventure tries to give you a bit of a tour-like approach. It tries to paint the various experiences in just 64 pages that you can have from Spelljammer, right? Spelljammer is ship battles. Spelljammer is exploring derelict spacecraft. Spelljammer is exploring new worlds that are weird and having battles with crazy creatures that come out of nowhere and do, wild, unexpected things. And then you leave and go to the next place. Yeah. And so there are a lot of these things that show up and again, like very quickly, right? They're very short, very quickly, but they try to give you all of these things, and I think that's good. There's nothing worse than a setting that promises a whole bunch of things, and then the adventure doesn't showcase them. So this does.
Yeah, it does, and it does so in a way that catered, I think, to what was missing from the adventures that had led up to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the adventures that led up to it, there was a lot of world building. There was a lot of history. There was a lot of slow, methodical exploration, or potential for that exploration.
Yeah.
And what this showed maybe a new generation of players and game masters was there's another way to play. It's not going to be a forever campaign, but people are going to want to get to the next session to see what happens to their characters. And they know, if you reveal it ahead of time, that there are only going to be 12 sessions. And then you'll be done. And then you can move on to the next thing. So I think this adventure is a benchmark for that, is an exemplar of that way that you can play.
Yeah, and you and I covered way back in episodes, looks like it was like 88 or so. We covered the very first Spelljammer adventure called Wild Space. And it was really interesting for you and I to look at and go, boy, this adventure, it's not like providing you a grounding, so to speak, experience. It's absolutely wild. It's like an inverted beholder Death Star with like just the wildest concepts. And speaking to the author, they're like, yeah, I don't know, I just did this weird stuff. Like nobody gave me real direction around introducing this setting. This adventure does a lot more to sort of help you get your ground, so to speak, on what a Spelljammer adventure can be about, right?
Yep. So let's go through the parts here. Part 1 is called Seeds of Destruction, and it chronicles the devastation wrought by these astral seeds that have been sent to the character's homeworld. Mm-hmm. These seeds grow into vine-like entities that attack, forcing you to leave your homeworld. Yeah. But you can escape thanks to a someone who has a Spelljammer who happens to be in port. You can escape into Wild Space.
Captain Elena Sartell.
That's right. So after fleeing, she takes you to her sort of home port called the Rock of Brawl, where you meet a GIF commander named Crux, who introduces you to the main villains of this adventure and what machinations they are planning for not only your world, but for many worlds.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. One of the things that you, if you're going to run this adventure, you have to make your peace with is that short serial nature, right? Like a TV show that has a limited budget and a limited time frame, and it's just got to get you to the chopper, right? And in this case, this chapter 1 Astral Reign, you can pick, the DM is instructed to choose whatever world they want, and you're in a coastal town of your choosing, or it can just be a generic world, doesn't matter. And rumors of falling stars, and suddenly these seed creatures and giant crystalline vines are coming out. Enormous, planet destroying, overwhelming, you can't win. Boy, Elena Sartell told you to meet her at the docks, so that's kind of the only thing you can do. And you can do things, but it all will lead you to the docks. And worst case, if you screw it up and don't, she comes by and picks you up, right? Like you are getting on that boat, right? And so it just is what it is. And what's fun is, you can have this moment of when you run it a certain way, you don't necessarily know, or it's more fun if you don't know, that this is a Spelljammer campaign. And so when you escape the docks after having gone through some thugs, probably, and you get onto the ship, then all of a sudden Elena Sartell just goes, hang on, and you go soaring up into the sky, right? And that can be a fun, like, wait, what? This is a Spelljammer campaign moment? Our ship is flying? I also like that the thug encounter where they're at the docks gives you some agency as to what you want to do and how you want to placate them. Like you might bring them on board as people who can help crew the ship, which is good. Or you might pay them off or defeat them, or what. There are a number of ways that can play out, and I like that.
Yeah, what I like about it, I like what you're saying, and to yes, and that is this chapter and the whole adventure gives DMs a lot of what they want. I hear DMs all the time say, I like the adventure to tell me what to do, but I'm also going to mine it for things. I'm going to change it. And this sort of has that assumption right from the start of, here's the bare skeleton. Do with it what you want. If you want these thugs to become a bigger part of the campaign for later intrigue, oh, we need the thugs because they're strong and we have to save these 60 people. They're going to be flying on the ship with us and they have no fighting capabilities. These thugs may be useful to us, so let's bring them on, versus I don't want to deal with them down the line. So either they're defeated or they just walk away.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's also an interesting, I mean, there's so much about that scene that's interesting. I mean, you're leaving all these people behind, right? And we're going to presumably get killed. It's very, very interesting. The whole world you're leaving behind to possibly die. You're not sure. And so there's some things there that I think, you know, as DM, you got to figure out, like, how do you handle the player who goes, but we got to go back and save the world. And, so, you know, sometimes you have to pull down the curtain and say, like, you don't think it's going to die quite yet. Maybe in a couple of weeks or months. So go to this adventure. Right. That's probably how you'll save them. Right.
Yeah. There is that. There's the, how do you get across to the players that this isn't, the adventure isn't in your home world?
Right. And Elena Sartell helps with that, because she says, we should go to the Rock of Brawl. And in chapter 2, you know, she's taking you to the Rock of Brawl where she says you can get help and she knows somebody. And the first thing that happens is you're intercepted by an Astral Elf Star Moth ship. And I'm holding up the mini. Very cool looking. It's a classic Spelljammer vehicle. So I'm glad they used this. It's so neat. And that really reinforces, it reveals the enemy. Right now, you know, it's the elves that are doing this. They're on these ships. They're formidable. They try to take the ship over. You can defeat them and get away from them. You may then have if you brought on all those bandits onto the ship, they may try to take the ship over, and you can deal with that sort of mutiny. And then you go like, great, now we can go to the Rock of Brawl. Well, you run into a Mind Flare Nautiloid ship. Right. Dun, 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 dun. And that's sort of the cliffhanger for chapter 2. I liked in chapter 2, I mean, Flapjack the Flumph, that's amazing. He's the Spelljammer pilot. That's super dope. Love that guy. The Astral Elves have a plasmoid crew, which is one of the new species. And they did, again, a really good job of, like, you know, you've got these new species in. Later, we'll see a Hadozi first mate, but we get, you know, the whole crew are these like jelly-like plasmoid creatures. I'm holding up the mini there. They're your crew, so you know you're meeting all the different types. Later, you'll see autognomes and things like that. So it's kind of a nice way to introduce that. And the plasmoid crew they work for the Astral Elves. They don't care to fight. So like after you defeat the Astral Elves, you can just take their crew, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So that's neat.
Like, hey, we'd love to work for you rather than them. Why not? So chapter 3 then deals with this Mind Flayer ship, which is actually a derelict ship abandoned because of the Sirlons that are on board. And this is another strength of an adventure like this, is you can, from week to week, really switch up the feel. Yeah. You can go from the escape of chapter 1 to the sort of a high-flying fun of a ship-to-ship combat in chapter 2, then to like a horror theme in chapter 3, this alien type situation as you move around this derelict ship and deal with the enemies that are there. Yeah,
it's very alien. You know, there are eggs and people who look like there's a guy who looks like a nice pirate who's willing to help, but he's actually trying to entrap you. He's a Sirlon in humanoid form. And there's a Nethalgu, which is this kind of weird creature that I'm holding up, spider-like guy. And so it's a really neat feel. And then we're kind of told as DM, hey, the way the cliffhanger happens is as soon as you're done with this, you may have had a number of tough fights. And as you come out, what's coming around but a Neogi Spelljammer called a Night Spider that looks like a sort of Black Widow with webs around it for rigging. It comes out looking like it's about to attack you. And that kind of ends that chapter.
Yep. So then you go right into part 2 from that cliffhanger where so in part 2, the characters deal with the character's journey to the edge of their own wild space system, where they will encounter Princess Zadali and learn the enormity of this problem that faces them. The characters can then head into Doomspace, where Commander Crux plans to join a coalition of those that oppose the Xaryxian Empire.
And so chapter 4, this Naogi mind spider shows up. You can decide, do you want to run a short fight or do you want to just hand wave the entire thing? Because as quickly as, and this is very like we talked about with those old TV shows, this impressive ship comes out. Oh no, we're going to be dead. We're already wounded. And then a bunch of ships show up from the forces from the Rock of Brawl, and hammerheads or squid ships or whatever show up, and they're friendly, and they start bombarding the Naogi spider ship, and it heads off. So you don't have to worry about it. I'm gonna say here, we want to be positive, but I don't want to trick you, right?
Sugarcoat it, right?
Yeah, right. I want to sugarcoat it. And an important thing to note is basically every battle in this entire adventure, except for the last one, is one where people board your ship. They either dimension door on board or pull alongside and jump in. You're not trading siege weapon fire and all of this. I think partly because they know that the system as written doesn't super work. Unfortunately. And they didn't have the time to develop it or the willpower to develop it. So they just, which is too bad, because when we used to play the 2E version, I had a game until 3:00 in the morning in my dorm room. The floor covered in ships, a massive battle. And boy, did we have a blast. I'm not saying it worked perfectly or that nostalgia would survive today, but we had an amazing time with then available ship rules. You kind of don't get that. And the whole adventure doesn't really give you that until the very last battle, maybe. And so it's just a thing to realize that a lot of these battles are either you're ship to ship next to each other, or the enemies just show up on ship, or you show up on the ship. And so it just is what it is.
Yeah. So in chapter 4, as Teos said, the DM can run a short fight, but people show up, drive away the Naogi. So the ship escorts the PCs back. The ships escort the PCs back to the rock. So here, the person who saved them, Sartell, heads off, gives the PCs the name of Commodore Crux, the gift that can tell them more about what's going on. So Crux, being a gift, a hippopotamus man, has a backstory, but he keeps it quiet. But he's glad to help the heroes, and he knows all about the Xaryxian Empire of Star Elves, Astral Elves, and what they are doing to the homeworld. And in an adventure like this, where it's quick move here, quick move there, lots going on in the background, you sort of need this narrator. You need this guide to stop and act as your voice at some points. If things get a little crazy, if things get a little confused, that character can just say, here's what's going on, and give the story, and then move the characters forward to the next part.
Yeah, and it's an interesting, again, it's really short, right? Part of it is these sessions are meant to be 2 to 3 hours. So it really is quick sessions and small page count, word count per each piece. So it really is like, hey, there's this, you arrive at the Rock of Brawl, and the Rock of Brawl is a whole setting that's detailed in the setting book with lots of locations. But what do? You go straight to this bar, the Happy Beholder, run by a beholder. And at a table right there is Commodore Crux, a big GIF, and I'm holding up his mini, and he goes, hey, have a seat. There's no, you're not working to find this guy. It's literally the first thing you do is come off the boat and find that guy and talk. And he's like, hey, I know about this Xaryxian Empire. And he gives you the kind of bullet points you need to, if there's any lack of clarity. Yes, they're responsible. It's these Star Elves. They're trouble. I know some people who can help us. Let's go to my ship. And you go there, you get attacked by Astral Elves. And again, very if they somehow start defeating you, people will rally to help you so you can get to the next part.
Right.
Which is not bad for new DMs in terms of instruction of what do I do if? Well, the adventure tells you, right?
Yeah.
Is it linear?
And even if you're an experienced DM, you can just say, okay, I'm going to run with it this way. Or I've got this whole setting in this book over here, and I can expand this out a little bit if I want.
Yep.
And so again, it goes back to this being an example of what this reminded me of. When I read this the first time and when I reread it, what this said to me was, hey, finally Wizards of the Coast has accepted organized play. Right. They've accepted this idea that you can have a fun adventure broken up into 2, 3, 4 hour sessions where maybe even one isn't really super connected to the last, or it's a very different experience, but people will still enjoy it.
Yeah. I am not, again, we're going to keep it positive, but I don't love it as much as you're saying. I can see that angle. And I think for some people that will absolutely work. But as you said, you can expand it, right? You can this almost, if we think of like the DMG 2024 and recent products giving you these outlines, this is a lot like one of those outlines, more fleshed out. So you could argue it's great because of that, right? It's like those formats, but even fuller. And if you want to do that work, you can. If you don't, well, you can use what's done here. What's given to you works. But it's pretty linear, and they do often talk about things, and they do give you complexities. Like, so for example, Crux takes you to the ship, and it's not as simple as just get on the ship. The ship called the Second Wind, he has rented it out. The captain, Felardra, is a tiefling. She's a smuggler, and she wants money to be bought out. So you have to negotiate. Her first mate is a Hadozi named Mr. Finch. Or I guess it's Crux's first mate. So, you convince Felardra, you get onto the ship, in some way, however it is that you figured that out, and you leave the rock. And then you get kind of to the next serial moment, which is being attacked by a Rhaegar. This is like a humanoid, but descended from cephalopods. So they have some kind of like glowing skin and stuff. Who is working for the Xaryxis Empire, attacks with a jellyfish-like aesthetic. So it's a good example of this quirky, weird aspect that Spelljammer can give you if you want it. And it has an attack. The jellyfish-like creature can disable your ship. So probably you end this chapter on this dun 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 moment of, oh no, we are on either a wrecked ship or a ship that's disabled. And our air is going to run out, and our enemy leaves us, when we've been defeated. And are we going to die? Question mark.
Well, no, because Chapter 5 has space whales called Kindori that can provide a lift to where Crux was taking them. Yeah. A small island with a tower.
Hey, Star Wars Rebels did it too.
That's right. And there's a mage that lives there in the tower with many birds and auto gnomes keeping the place going. Sure. She can be the guide, right? She can provide the wild space orrery, which helps map the star systems.
Perfect.
But it can't just be that easy, because she needs you to fight Big Mama. Yeah.
And Big Mama is a huge scaver, which is like a shark. I'm holding up the mini. There are Spelljammer puts that they're the little like guppies swimming around in space. Well, there are also giant sharks that are there with big red eyes and stuff. And so one of those comes at you. It's kind of neat how it can come at you, because you're told about Big Mama and you think you're going to go to your ship to attack her. But it's when you're on this little jolly vessel going back to your ship, that's when Big Mama attacks, and you may or may not spot her as she comes for you. That's a neat moment. And that makes it kind of fun. Space sharks are great. Sharks are just fun always. Like, as much as in our real world, they're not really a danger.
I was going to say, I know a few people that might not, but in D&D, sharks.
In D&D, like Dark Sun, we have the version in 4th edition that the sharks that go through the silt. Oh, can't get enough of those guys. Super fun, right? And so at some point around here, Topola remembers, hey, you know what? I had an old boyfriend. That could help. And so she flies over, she casts the fly spell literally, and flies to your ship and says, hey, we should go find my old boyfriend, Garganhale. Doesn't tell you the full story about Garganhale, who is a vampire. But you go to what should be the fleet of her boyfriend that can help you, and you find this field of destroyed ships, and that's sort of the dun 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 for chapter 5. And in chapter 6, you meet up with the vampire Grimson Garganhel. You deal with, do you negotiate with this the vampire who is missing a hand? And the hand that he's missing is now a crawling claw that's on his shoulder, which is sort of fun. The mini shows that too. He has a mutiny.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have pirates, you have to have a mutiny because we need to get our combat in there somehow. So as you negotiate, this mutiny happens, and he asks you to chase after his ship and help win it back. And then you get to explore the ship. You deal with the undead there, and there's a prisoner on board that Garganhale has taken. And who is that prisoner, Teos?
Oh, she says to you, "I am Princess Zidali, daughter of Emperor Zyvan, and heir to the throne of Xaryxis." So this is the twin sister of the evil Nemesis. And dun 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 dun, that's revealed, which takes us to part 3, where we talk to the princess. And she says, Zelith, my evil brother, is my twin. He wants to take the throne now that our father is passing. I want to prevent my brother from taking the throne. You help me, I help you. Help me reclaim my throne. I've got this ring of shooting stars that I tell you is important. And I will help you get your world back if you can get me there. So you're like, great. Right now, I have all the makings of this, and it's now that Crux shares his great story of sorrow. So the gift tells you that he was part of a big attack on the Empire and the Imperial Fortress, but they were routed, and Prince Zelith has a solar dragon, who attacks, and his ship fled. He lost many comrades. He feels like he was a coward because gift historically are very war driven and, will go down with their ship, never surrender, never run away. So he feels terrible about that. And so the plan is to go to Doomspace, a destroyed wild space system where those opposing the Empire are gathering. But we need to make a stop, Shawn. Can't just go straight to Doomspace. We need that combat, as you talked about.
Right. There's always the next, here's the story. We need a combat in there.
Yeah. And
so the characters head to planet Arun to get his friend, another gift named Warwick Blastomoff. They end with rescuing Artuk, and then some bullets.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Yeah, and it's sort of funny. You can even hand wave the bullets if you don't want to have the battle or not in the next one.
Yeah.
And so some things I really like about this chapter, we get a nice write-up of the crew and what they're doing as you travel to Doomspace so you can bond with them. Very nice touch because that's important, right? Like your ship. And the ship has changed, right? We had the original Sartell's vessel, the Moon Dancer. Then we went to the Second Wind, which, by the way, has a treant on board that regenerates the air in the middle of it. That's very cool. And then we get the vampire joining us. We get, we've got the princess now. And so things are changing. So having this moment where you get to link up below the crew, excellent design. Landing on the planet could be more interesting, but at least it gets you that touch point of show up on an alien world, weird stuff attacks you like these Artuk creatures, save a guy, head off, go somewhere else. And Shawn, there's a rumor that I've heard.
Okay, I want to hear this rumor, Teos.
From 2 different people that aren't staff, that when Roll20, well, this part I can tell you is true. We lived through it. When Roll20 had a series of Spelljammer preview blogs, not ones I wrote, though I did write some of the blogs, one of them featured a map. And that map looks just like the one that's in the book showing Doomspace, but it was called Athos Space. And when people went,
Athos being the world of Dark Sun, just in case people don't know.
So people start asking questions on, then Twitter, and Roll20 changes the image to now say Doomspace. So here's the rumor part. Heard from 2 different sources, non-staff, that Doomspace originally was planned as Dark Sun's system.
Okay.
So it was supposed to be Athos Space. Athos would now be destroyed. That's why when you look at the Dark Sun Monstrous or the Monstrous Compendium that was released for Spelljammer, or this monsters in this book, Boo's Astral Menagerie, you find all of these Dark Sun monsters because the idea is they're the remnants of what was on Athos before it was destroyed. And apparently staff decided at the last second that maybe they shouldn't destroy Athos, and it became Doomspace instead, if the story is true.
If, in fact, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
There's always something that people don't know in any story, so just enjoy that for what it is.
Right. For the rumor that it is.
Yeah.
So we go to chapter 8. Chapter 8, Arena of Blood. What's a good pulp series without an arena on a strange world? So Warwick, once the rescued, tells the characters there's an alliance meeting at Vokath's base, orbiting one of the 9 moons of N. But what happens when you go to this place where people are getting together to rescue the universe? They end up fighting.
Yeah.
So we go to the scene of convincing folks to actually work together to do the thing that needs to be done. And it turns out that in order to get them to listen to you, what do you have to do? Survive the arena.
Sure.
For 3 rounds. So you fight. What happens, though, Teos, when you fight?
Well, Prince Zealous shows up with his solar dragon and demands his twin be surrendered to him. Dun, 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 dun. Just when you thought you're going to just easily put an alliance together. And you can decide whether you're going to fight or not, but he's pretty overwhelming in the current state that you're in. What I dig about this, it has some very Cloud City vibes, right? Plus then the arena that is like a million Star Trek episodes and things like that. Very Flash Gordon-y, that kind of thing. And the arena fights, by the way, are all Dark Sun monsters. Barogues, Braxat, Megapede, one after the other. Then the prince shows up, and now you got to decide what to do. And in the next chapter, because of course that was our cliffhanger when the prince shows up, it likely gets solved by what the princess does, which is she uses the mislead spell to make it look like she's just walking forward, when invisibly she's dropping her ring of shooting stars for you and whispers you with sending that she's doing this. So she surrenders herself to Prince Zealous. He's happy with that because now he can show that with her at his side, he should be in fact crowned prince, and all the masses of astral elves will think that's all grand. But that leaves the PCs, and now the PCs can take that ring and they can form the coalition. So you do that, you head towards Xaryxis space, and one of the weirdest twists out of nowhere, it ends on a cliffhanger of running into a dragon with a Gith rider, and you think like, oh no, we're gonna fight. And the Githyanki makes a joke and then basically just says, have you seen any mind flayers? Oh, you're fighting the Empire? Here's oil of sharpness. And that's in chapter 10. And then we go to the giant space battle, Shawn.
Yes. So the Xaryxia, a star moth with an astral elf commander, comes after the PCs. So both the coalition and the Xaryxian armada are fighting. They're losing a ship each round.
Yeah.
Now the PCs can affect this. When the PCs defeat the commander, 7 young solar dragons approach, with 2 going after the PCs, but they won't attack if they see this ring of shooting stars. So hopefully you become aware that this ring has some sort of power more than just as a magic item.
Yeah, and the thing that's presented here, which is very interesting, it's very kind of like Return of the Jedi kind of vibes. It's like the idea is really you're supposed to, you start realizing that, you know, all of the ships are one after the other dying. If you think of that throne room scene with Luke talking to the Emperor, and, you know, you see the explosions off in the back, that's the feel you're supposed to have. And so you're supposed to get whether you fought these solar dragons or not, do we surrender or do we make a break for the Citadel? That's sort of the 2 scenarios we're given. And what's really cool is you do finally get that big ship battle. It's easy enough for a DM to make it longer, bigger if desired. But as we roll into chapter 11, you're going to have one of those 2 scenarios. You could be taken by prisoner to the coronation event, which is classic TV type situation, right? You know, like, oh no, but you know what they're going to do? They're going to take you right to where you want to go. And in fact, the commander who's escorting you is allied with the princess, so he gives you all your weapons.
Yep.
Or you might sneak in
if you're going to have a big battle.
Right. Or you might sneak in and try to ruin the coronation, which means you also show up with all your weapons. And so either way you get there, Prince Zealous accuses the princess. The PCs can speak on her behalf. Likely leads to a trial by combat with a creature called the Zodar, Shawn.
Yes, the Zodar is a construct that has served the family for a long time and did the will of the father of the twins who died recently, hence this whole coronation. So there's also Well, I want to put it this way. The Zodar sort of is an enemy, but also a deus ex machina, right? Because it knows that if the heir is not worthy, that it needs to end the world, basically. So again, you have these huge things that may or may not be outside of the PC's control, but you can use them as the game master to make sure that the story goes in a way that is most pleasing, hopefully, to everybody at the table.
Yeah, and the Zodar is, I think, is it Maximilian, the name of the black hole?
Yeah, yeah.
The robot, one of those robots on the black hole 1979 movie, very clearly like that. And it's got this, I've served the family for generations type concept. So you are going to end up with, the other thing is this astral font, right? That is in the center, that somehow you'll know connects directly to that sun. And so you defeat the Zodar, it falls immobile and just seems to be sitting there slumped. Okay. And then,
you know what we didn't do?
What?
Is talk about why all of this is happening.
Oh, yep, we did.
That's how important or unimportant the plot is to this adventure. The whole reason that this is happening is because the son of Xaryxis is dying.
Yeah.
So they send out these seeds to plant on planets that steal the energy from the planets to fuel their sun. Yeah. It destroys the planet. Their sun stays active for just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So that's where that's why the characters end up here, to destroy or stop this stealing of the energy from their homeworld.
Yeah, and something the adventure does well, unlike us, is they reinforce this pretty well. Not only do you live through the problem and the gift tells you things, but like, for example, that Rhaegar that shows up that works for the Empire, he'll actually tell you, I'm the guy who told the prince to use your world.
Haha.
Right? Like, haha. Very movie show from the 70s and 80s. So there's this large astral font in the center of glowing energy, which sends a beam directly to the sun. If you enter that area, you'll go to the sun. Gee, I wonder how that will be used. So you defeat the Zodar.
Hope it doesn't crack.
Right? And don't crack the sun. And so you end up with one of two things. You either were defeated by the Zodar, in which case the prince makes fun of you and gets ready to do the terrible thing, or you have defeated the Zodar, which means you won the challenge, and now the princess tells the guards to seize the prince. And then she turns around and says, you know what? I'm not going to save the world. I used you to get the throne. Haha. Yep.
Twist.
There's your chapter 11 cliffhanger. So then we get to chapter 12, and that cliffhanger, how does it get resolved, Shawn?
Well, it gets resolved in a way I mentioned. The Zodar, the ancestral guardian, tells the characters to, quote, take the ring of stars into the heart of the star where it was forged, and your world will be saved. So basically, the Zodar says neither of these twins are worthy of rulership. This is a lost world now, so it should. And then the Zodar crumbles to dust. Mm-hmm. So the PCs, when the Zodar crumbles to dust, get back all of their hit points, as well as a greater restoration spell in case they have any conditions affecting them. Yeah. They also probably still have the ring, or at least have access to it. Now they have to take it to the sun. Someone needs to be willing to sacrifice themselves, or one of the NPCs will step forward to go into the sun. So whoever makes the sacrifice dies, but saves the galaxy as the Xaryxis star sun/star collapses.
Yeah. And the vampire Garganhale will do it if no PC wants to, making a funny joke about the irony of vampires heading into the sun. And then it kind of presents this question, which is a very interesting, we talked about this Rime of the Frost mating sort of, choices that you present to the PCs. And the big one that's sort of presented is, are you okay with destroying the sun? Because we learn not only will it save your world, but it actually will destroy their sun and many of the planets in this wild space system, meaning all the astral elves now must flee, many of which presumably are not super evil dudes. So what do you want to do? And it doesn't really give you any nice answer to that. It just is what it is. And so you've got to decide which way you go, and then the DM describes it appropriately as you are either flying out of there or you've saved Xaryxis space but doomed your world, which is interesting.
And that's it. So you can have this powerful PC moment if somebody wants to sacrifice, knowing that, hey, this is a short campaign, this is the end, so do what you feel. And so overall, I really like this format. I like it as a 64-page adventure. I think it provides a solid foundation, letting the DM do what many DMs like to do, make changes to their campaign based on their characters, their players, their own sense of storytelling. And this gives a framework in which to do that.
Yeah, that's the way I look at this adventure. For me, this is a framework, not a thing. As much as I like that this is one of the few adventures we've reviewed, you really can't just run exactly the way it is. To me, it's thin as written. And so even though I know it's trying to be campy and trying to do that, and I would guess that if we were to ask Chris Perkins, why'd you do this? He's like, because this is what I was going for. Right? Yeah. Like, this is deliberate. Like, yes, all the bad things are on purpose because of the good result. So I like the good parts of it being easy to run. You can run it as is, but I would breathe a lot more into it because I would want a wider, more interesting story and choices, and not to be so linear. But I absolutely love that it gives you so many classic Spelljammer moments. It does do that really well. And I would just be, I'd make the battles more interesting and the options and choices more reflective. But there's a lot here that's neat. And I love that Spelljammer came back. It did so perfectly because of the space battles and wild shape things or wild space things. But, having giant miniature space or giant hamsters, space hamsters, again, was super great. Having all the ships and just incredible stuff. Like, one of the big swings and misses that I thought was interesting that later this year we get the Dragonlance set that comes with a board game. And yet we have all these amazing Starship minis that WizKids did and no space game for them. And I'm like, they should have made a space board game that was the combat rules. And that would have been way better, I think, than anyway. But who knows?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Teos, for sharing all of your knowledge on this. And thank you to everyone listening. We hope you enjoyed this. We hope it makes you want to run out and think about using this adventure like I am right now, running a little mini campaign. For those of you who like the show, you can become a patron of the show like many, many others have. You can go to patreon.com/masteringdnd, become a Master of Dungeon supporter. We thank you for that. You can become a Master of Realm supporter who get a call out here in our show notes, and our Masters of the Multiverse. Those patrons get to hear their names spoken every week. Agile Monk of Fantasy Companion Workshop, Keith Ammon of The Monsters Know What They're Doing, Lou Anders of Lazy Wolf Studios, Craig Bailey, Rudy Chainsaw Basso, David Bastianson, Derek the Bearded GM, Steve Bissonette, Merrick Blackman, Bosch John from Duality Press, Calvin Bridges of Alos, Brobo Ballad, Kevin Criswell, Dead Inertia DM, Evil John, Evan at Nimbleco, Kevin Davis, Andy Edmonds at Nerdronomicon.com, James Fisher, Scott Fitzgerald Gray at Insane Angel Studios, Ted and Guyana of Frog Helmet Games, Ben Heisler and Paige Lightman, Simon the Hunter, Sean Hurst, Hyperlexic, The Jaunty Mantis TTRPG Podcast, Mark and Mary's Gaming Compound, The Mighty Jared, Jordan of Season of War, JR of The Twilight Perspective, JT Evans, Brian King, Jim Klingler, Gail Kiermandy, Schwill from Maine, Leftria, Chad Lynch, Paul Mata, The Mathemagician, Jaron from Mathis Arcanum, Eric Mengi, Anna B. Meyer of Fantasy Cartography, Trey McLemore, Michael, John Mickey, Sean Malley, Dustin from Mountain and Myth Fantasy Maps, Falcon Neal, Tom Nelson of the Deck of Player Safety, DT Norris of DT and Dragons, Phil Wirt from the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, Philip N. Lindsay, Frog Prince at Tentacle Squelching Wetly, Post Fiction RPG Audio, Ricardo Who Might Adventure, Robert Pasley, Vladimir Printer from Croatia, Joe Rosso, Ozymandias Rex, Runner Rick, David Rideout, Chance Russo at Drago Russo, Sergio and James from the D&D Lorecast, Andy Shockney, Krishna Simos, Tim Smith, Spark from Dunor Games, Jeff Stevens at jeffstevensgames.com, Josh and Lee Wanika of the Tabletop Journeys podcast, Talos the Stormlord, Jeremy Talaman from Masters of Alchemy, Trace, Ryan Truk, Joe Tyler, Earthworm, Marcelo de Velasquez, the Valiant DM, Viduocles G, James Walton, Graham Ward, Jason Ward from Accidental Cyclops Games, Javier Waziak, Waterford Wizard, Chris Webster, Dave Wright, Convention Overlord of Tabletop Scotland and Master of Mergome at Polyhedral Adventures. Welcome and thank you. Ian Wright and Z. Walt Winfrey. Thank you so very much. If you can't help us via our Patreon, no problem. You can really help us out by going to wherever you listen to this show and giving us a review. If it's a podcast, give us those stars. If it's via YouTube, which is youtube.com/@masteringdungeons, subscribe, give us some thumbs, give us a comment. We love to hear from you. Teos, got anything going on the socials?
Yes, I did a blog post, just sort of whimsical one comparing soccer and D&D and what we can learn, or RPGs and what we can learn from how they're different and why games are special compared to sports. So really dedicated to our good friend Sly Flourish. And then I'll hope to get back on the video track this week as well.
Cool. You can find me on the socials at Shawn Merwin. You can follow the socials, the podcast socials at Mastering D&D. You can join our community, talk to us on Patreon, or you can, of course, always email us at masteringdnd@gmail.com. So we have been to Wild Space and back. The world is saved. What are we going to do now?
Well, Shawn, it's time to make that special adventure where you bring in space clowns and I forget what it's called, the asteroid that has a giant face on it and can eat you. So
that's a weird name for a monster. I would try to workshop that and get it down to something a little more manageable. In the meantime, I will probably go do stats for that.